you have a master's in education, I believe.
Yeah, I do.
Has that played a role? Like, is there anything that had to be like unlearned there? Is there's like, like, oh, I don't want to be so rigid and academic about the way I convey information. Has it benefited you, would you say, in what is your current profession?
I think it's benefited me in the way kind of like your sense of healthy skepticism, or what I would just call discernment, using discernment. And because there's a balance, and I think that I offer that balance, which is very accessible to a lot of people. That's not so over in the woo-woo. And I can get that way. If I'm using my drum and I'm chanting and I'm not all in it. But at the same time, if I can come up with a sense of these steps work for me, let's go through these steps. But again, prefacing it always with honor your own inner wisdom above mine. You know what's best for you above mine. Notice what feels like what I'm saying resonates with you and what doesn't. Drop what doesn't. It's just like spit out the bones. You do find the meat for yourself. So in the type of teaching, I think what really was a carryover is that I've always been a teacher. Like I've always felt like, even as a child, it's like when you play, I'm always playing teacher. I'm always playing. I always felt that desire to teach, but my father has, a lot of that kind of, I'm Cherokee and from his family. And so a lot of that native kind of energy of wisdom and the way that he brought me up, of just like, you don't need the career of a teacher to be a teacher. You're a teacher because you're a teacher.
Certainly.
That's who you are. And so I always kind of held that. And I think even that perspective is very different than most psychics. Like people tell me all the time, why do you train people to be your competition? I'm like, I don't see that, because I teach psychic development. I teach people how to start their careers in this, or how to, I teach shamanism. I teach all of it that I do. And I give it all. It's not like I'm holding back the recipe. I'm like, it's not, to me, it's just like learning how to read. It's like, what do you want to do with it? What is your own, or teaching someone how to cook. You're going to still pick your own spices and have your own flavors of the way that you do what you do. That's going to really draw people in. And so, yeah, I feel like that to me, like it is important. Like I want people, I don't want to pull away a sense. I don't want to disempower people through this service. And oftentimes people in the spiritual community that have been elevated in some way, like the priest, or that whatever genre you want to look at, through religions or through the ancient community as well. There's always been kind of that elevated perspective, and they disempower those that they're trying to help. If they don't say, you are just as powerful as me. Look at it. You're getting the information. And I try to do that in my sessions, to not be like Rachel the Almighty, let me give you the information I have, but to be inside and say, listen, they're already talking to you. Notice, this is what I'm trying to show people. And I try to educate in that same way, because to me, that's way more important in life, because you can't call on a psychic or a shaman every 5 minutes. It's like you need to learn to have, the gifts that you do have. And I feel like that sense of personal awareness, personal knowledge, personal wisdom is more important.
You very much remind me of the beginning of my philosophical intake of a philosopher named Alan Watts.
Yeah, I love Alan Watts.
Oh, yeah. Gotta love him, and his sultry accent, and just him and all of his recording.
He's thick.
I can
just read it. Yeah.
Just so well studied. And I was right when I first started doing any kind of public speaking, I spoke a lot about his philosophy. And I tried to. Someone said, "Can you boil all of his philosophy down into just one quick question?" And I said, "I'll try." And you reminded me of that. Do you trust life or not? And I feel like almost as if that is, it comes back to someone asked me, if you trust life, then you allow energy to flow. You allow energy to flow in others. And I feel like a lot of what you're doing is healing what, in a church one time, they asked me, what do you think the original sin is? What do you think all brokenness comes from? And I think it's the belief in separation.
Yes.
That is where we become separated from ourselves. That's where the discovery of the word atonement, of like, well, how do you atone? Well, atonement, if you spell it out, at one-ment. So you bring back together the duality. You bring back together the separation. You heal the idea of separation, the poverty consciousness, and I bring all this up because it flows so well with what you were stating of that you want to empower people. You're not like, no, competition. No, mine, me. I don't have enough. The world won't bring me money if I train other psychics. Like right. I need to hoard it. I need to. And then that's so very beautiful to hear that you are open. I mean, I believe that is, tantamount to like your gifts and stuff like this, allowing energy to flow. It's so often people are like, oh, I need to go out and desire something so I can go and get it. And like, I got to go control and make, and it's all more about an allowing, like, oh, it's all trying to come to you. It's like holding two magnets, one that's your desire that you want to have come to you. And then the other that's repelling because you're saying, oh, I want this, but you're really saying, I don't have this. And so poof, there it goes. So I think that's really, really a beautiful thing that you are very willing to you're able to empower everybody. Because I think that's the big healing. That's the healing in the larger system, is to empower as many people as possible to hit that critical mass where all of a sudden, like, this becomes, that's that next evolution on this planet where it's like people are more feeling, they're more intuitive, they're more, empathic. And then they're embracing it. There's more of a flow of energy, less hoarding, separation from each other and them within. And it's absolutely beautiful.
I love that you connected that. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no.
I love that you connected that to that concept of healing, because in the collective or in the individual, because that is so much, I feel like, too, of my perspective of healing, and that the shamanic perspective that is so at one, or bringing that sense of unity and non-dualistic experience of healing, which is missing in so much of our current realms of medicine. Even in psychology, there's a sense of like, let's process it outside of you, or let's or even people just feeling disempowered by the process, like doctors aren't listening to them, or they're too busy and they don't feel like a person, they feel like a number in the process, or like the pill is out here and then I try to like make it through my body to have this, and I try to align with believing that this is healing me. Or even given a scary diagnosis, so many people just they have more PTSD trauma that they're storing in their body from hearing that diagnosis of something that is incurable. So much of that healing process, I feel like, is coming from basically just bridging the idea of separation, even all the way into every organ in the body, every cell, every molecule, every little bit of our sense of self. And anyways, that's so much a part of the healing experience and coming back into alignment with the body.
That's beautiful. With that alignment, with the idea of the magnets, I feel when someone wants, when they desire something enough, a lot of times people, I'm sure you get this all the time, where people are like, well, I desire this tremendously. Of course, you want to desire something without an attachment to the outcome. But when someone desires it, it's yes, you do have this desire, but perhaps you have this other desire that you're attached to a comfort level of suffering or something like this. And so that's why you kind of bring this up. We used to say at one of these churches I used to do speeches with was, healing is thy will be done. And that is that healing that you get when you desire this more than whatever you're benefiting from in some way, to hold on to the trauma, to hold on to that separation, that dualistic nature in which, we're all bred into from the beginning of our being raised.
Yes.
So, but yeah.
Awesome. Yes. The imagery, like when you were saying that about healing, it's like I get the imagery of this like big open arm, like, yes, heal me, heal me, versus like, heal me, where you're grabbing and the energy, the emotional energy that is completely different in those two, the same words, but two different expressions of how the healing takes place. And that's so true. And that's the same can be said in terms of like, thy will be done with that's kind of the prayer too, with every session, or having a sense of like letting it flow through, letting it be whatever is relevant for that person. And it's typically something that, is absolutely shattering to me. Like I would never come up with it, or I would be too embarrassed to do it, or I can't even tell you how many stories I've had from just like, I'm embarrassed to even say what I see. And yet I say it anyways, because that's what spirit is showing, or that's what they're saying. And then they're like, just tears, like, oh my God, that's been my childhood, my reoccurring dream, whether it's super out there, like a shark attack and they lose 2 legs and eyes drooping. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm getting. And they're like, oh, that's been my reoccurring childhood fear. And I've had these dreams. And so I'm like, okay now. But it's never in our academic like way of, it always seems like something that is kind of beyond, and letting the will just flow through and having the sense of availability to that. That's the healing. That's all of it.
You touched upon something right now, in the practicality of being someone who has the gifts you have. You were stating earlier, like, look at me, I got a normal family, I got kids, I got I'm living a life. So I'm very curious. So this is something I always like to ask people who have very perhaps unusual talents or unusual professions. You mentioned, you have to use discernment when you see something, when you feel something. Probably you often do out in the wild, outside of like a dedicated session or something like that. So I'm always curious to ask people that have such intuitive psychic abilities, how does it affect your dating life? How does it affect your relationship life? You know what I mean? How do you
I didn't expect that question. That's funny.
When do you not say something? When do you say something? I have to imagine that's a very wild experience on both sides. Like, do you get together with other shamans? Like, have you ever, I'm so very, very curious about how that kind of experience is, the uniqueness of it.
It's ongoing, just like every relational interaction. You're always learning and trying to be better with the way that you handle yourself. And I think, I've handled it differently in different relationships. I've handled it differently as a child than I do as an adult. So just maturing and learning, hey, not wise to check in on them and remote view on them all the time. I think when I was a teenager and a kid, I used to remote view and check in on people all the time that I was dating. I'd be like, are they telling the truth? And are they really at that party they said? Are they really not with so-and-so? I'd remote view, I'd check it out. And then I got like, you know what? That's not really good psychic ethics. And I don't know if I would be okay if somebody was doing that to me. And so just maturing through that kind of I think that's a young way of dealing with gifts. I've always loved that movie About Time. Have you ever seen that movie? Oh God, you got to check it out. Well, I can't make the reference now, but anyways, the normalcy of the psychic life. I love the normalcy of that because it makes it so much more human and approachable versus like so many of the sci-fi stuff that, we're like laying in a pool of water and we can't it's just creepy. They amp up the creep, but that movie About Time is very unsensationalized in the experience. And I love how in the end, he uses his gifts just for a sense of better interaction in life. And I feel like that's kind of what I do now. I used to, when my children were born, when they would have night terrors or something that they couldn't communicate, I would go in and I want to see what's causing the night terror. So I would go into their dream space and want to see what the dream meant. And then they were so terrifying. I was like, I don't think I want to know this information. I don't want to. It would be like a past life. That was an example of my middle child where he was extremely tortured. He was a spy and he was tortured. And we've had so many experiences. And most of our history is very traumatic and brutal on this earth. Just brutal life. It was difficult for many ways. And then living with the emotional residue of that knowledge was heavier than not knowing. And so then I began to kind of go into the space of all right, in all my relational dynamics, what is useful versus what I'm capable and I have access to this information, but what is really useful for this relationship? What seems like it's helpful and helpful to them in their own sense of validating their free will and honoring that and honoring what they ask. So now I ask. It's one of my strong psychic ethics, and I teach this in all my classes, that I ask verbal permission before I connect with anyone or go into their body, like in a direct. I get information that's just like waves. If people are angry, anybody gets that, right? You can tell when someone's angry at the supermarket when they're like, they're going. I mean, we get interaction because we're living and breathing in a sea of energy all the time. So we're getting this, but I'm not using my gifts in a very directed way with a sense of precision unless I ask permission. So, like the current guy that I'm dating, I asked him before if he's okay with that. He said, no, I don't want you going in. So I never have. It's been about 10 months. I've never gone in. Even when he got in a car accident, I was like, please let me go into your body. Let me check your organs. Let me just make sure you're okay. Make sure there's no puncture or anything. He's like, nope, don't do it.
I want to find in anything else.
No, that's usually the case. No, but I think it's more, I've learned in my sense of growth that a lot of times it's more supportive for the trust in the relationship to develop that than it is to go around what they're asking you to do. So that's where I'm at now. It affects my relationships, but I don't utilize the gifts. When I was younger, I had to have a sense of, I hadn't learned that. So, and I also didn't have a lot of psychic boundaries set up. That was something, it's something that I teach, like Psychic 101. You have to learn how to, if you're extremely gifted and have a lot of connection and are receiving, it can feel like you're going crazy. You need boundaries. You need to have a sense of when I should interact and say something and when I shouldn't. And especially when those things feel really bombarding or like you can't function in the 3D world. And when I was younger, I was like that. When I would get a lot of information, I would get really frustrated with her. Just like, why are you showing me all these visions? I would say it to people. You shouldn't do that. You're going to break your arm. You're going to cut your hand. And they just wouldn't listen because I was like a 6-year-old kid. They didn't listen. So then I would just get really frustrated, or walking to school and I would feel like every house, like if a certain house had like child abuse going on or someone was getting a divorce, I would see like the scenes of this stuff and I'm like, oh God. And then I had to get a sense of like, okay, certain boundaries have to be placed in a relational dynamic. So I had to get those set up, and those are pretty firm. So in my relational interactions, I'm very proactive instead of reactive now.
And I really appreciate that. I oftentimes say in any kind of relationship coaching that all boundaries are self boundaries. Like all boundaries are for boundaries within the self that you're setting up. What would I do? What would I not? And I have to imagine a lot of people, especially younger people who are realizing that they have these gifts, very tempting, a lot of responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, right?
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Peter Parker. Yes.
Awesome. And so I guess when that comes to relationals, I'm very curious. Like, do you totally fully believe that anyone can be a psychic, anyone can be a shaman, that these are all latent within us if they're not active, and that we can uncover these gifts within us if we, go through perhaps. For many people, it sounds like what you're saying, as someone who teaches these kinds of things, that they're, depending on the person, different avenues to get to a similar destination. Some people have to unlearn certain things.
It's just like I do fully believe that everyone's capable of it. It's like everyone has a form. Everyone has muscles. We have a structure. Now, how we use those, whether we, go to the gym every day and want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger and have that level of connection with our system, or whether we just want to be a healthy, balanced human and we want to take care of our form. And by this, I'm just meaning our connections. We're spirit before we're body. It's who we are. It's just like quantum mechanics trying to describe something that already is. And we see, it's a new discovery. It's not new. Yeah. We're just languaging it. Something that's been happening and has been present. We're just suddenly getting a sense of, technology that's able to assess it, but it is what it is. That's why there's a sense of it being ancient. This is like the oldest thing because we're more spirit than we are form. We're spirit before we take on this sense of form. So it doesn't matter what your form is like. It doesn't matter what, how you're neurologically wired. It's there. It is what it is. This is part of the human experience, is putting soul into form and trying to integrate that and to learn that. So just like, there's a sense of health, keeping our bodies healthy, watching when we eat, using the muscles that we have, otherwise they atrophy, right? Yeah. It's the same with the psychic senses. And the same with our sense of giftedness. There are 6 traditional psychic senses that were outlined when they first kind of started getting into parapsychology and started developing programs that were funded and government programs. They identified out the traditional 6, which are clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient, claircognizant, claircentrist, smell, and clairgustant, which is taste. But the traditional ones, just like learners, how you say there's people that are more kinesthetic learners, more visual learners, more auditory learners, the same type of experience of leaning and having a more dominant psychic sense. Some people are more visual. They're drawn towards visual experiences, art, and learning through visual, like having them draw it out for them, and then they understand it. Those people are typically more clairvoyant. They receive information through the realm of imagery and the dream space, and having a sense of vision with it. Their mind works that way in more harmony with their non-physical interaction. Some people are more clairaudient. So this is the ones that can read a book or listen to a podcast and know the information. It's the same type of learning, but it is internal and validated from a sense of, a lot of times they've been having conversations with themselves their whole life. They've just never tried to sit down and do a character analysis of who they're talking to or who's speaking or what like I shared earlier, what does that language actually sound like? Or have you had it back and forth? Have you said, who are you?
Yeah.
Have you opened that? So yeah, I do believe everybody is absolutely, there's nothing special about that. Yet some people, are Olympic athletes and they use their body in a way that has a lot of precision and training to it. And some that's not useful for, they don't have a desire for that. And they just want to live a happy, healthy life. And so, but there is a form, I think, that's relevant for everyone, of just integration, of just having integration with the non-physical realm, not feeling fearful when something comes out. Like I feel an energy around me and just wanting to run, like when you're a kid. That's the most common kid experience, is like knowing someone's there, but you don't see anyone there. That's the experience of clairsentience, like feeling energy that's not physical. And yet not having a sense of control over that, I feel like leaves people feeling really fearful, or in a realm of like needing to go to somebody else to tell them, versus like, okay, well, let's learn some boundaries. Let's learn some basics here. They give you a sense of integration with the world that you already live in. You're already a part of this energy world. So let's just learn how to swim when you're already a fish. You know what I'm saying?
That's beautiful. And I like the precision in that. Like to find any level of precision in what is so commonly seen as an imprecise, scientifically unreproducible, is, a lot of times it's like, hey, knock twice if you're my higher self talking to me. Because I to have a little bit more precision than just that. So I think that brings us to near the end here. I have to imagine that anyone who's heard that would probably be very interested in reaching out, perhaps even taking a look at what it is that you have to offer. Where would be the best place for people to perhaps sign up for a class or check you out further in your material?
It's all online. So I just always send people to my website, and that's themodernshaman.net. So if you go to themodernshaman.net, on there, each little tab, like there's a tab for sessions, there's a tab for online learning, which is pretty much all online now with the quarantine, that, so people can kind of download and move at their pace in terms of the video modules. But that's all available there. I'm starting back up touring. I say that kind of, I had a big touring schedule, and then with COVID, everything kind of went crazy. So, but I think I'm starting back up. We'll see what that happens. But all of that is online, themodernshaman.net. And really, I have a lot of free content, free resources on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel where people just send in their questions and answers. And I do live streaming on Facebook. I try to do it every other Friday, where people just send in questions. It's not readings. I don't do readings like that for people, where I don't really believe in panel readings. I don't like reading for other people, like to put on a show for other people to watch somebody else's trauma. I don't really like that. So I don't do those kind of things. But I do, but I just share like this in a conversation of like anything that may be relevant of what's on their heart. I don't do the deep readings like that, like some psychics do, but that's also open. I have a lot of, like, if people are genuinely interested, seek and you shall find. It's available. I'm open there. And the best way is just the website, themodernshaman.net.
Beautifully put. And we'll go ahead and link all those in the description down below. Thank you, Rachel, for joining.
Yes, thank you. I loved it. That was a wonderful conversation.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Yes, absolutely. Awesome. Until next time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.